So, can you believe it's been 20 years? It's, but even to go back a little further back,
Yeah.
um, there we were at the Dell,
Hmm.
or actually in Tahoe. I think we began talking about it even at the
Yeah.
conference in Tahoe.
Yeah.
But what were you at the Sorghum Association of the Checkoff program thinking about in terms of working with Oldways to promote sorghum and whole grains?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about you guys, and then kind of, somebody reached out to me to say, hey, there's this cereal called sorghum. Do you want to come? And I said, okay. So, I didn't really know what Old Ways was trying to go for, aside from, expanding out of the work you guys were doing on the Mediterranean diet and olive oil.
Hmm.
And, you know, sorghum for a long, long time in the United States, especially with Lloyd Rooney. I don't know if you remember Lloyd,
Yep.
but Lloyd at Texas A&M, he was a cereal chemist um, out there, had been working for a long time trying to get somebody interested in the United States to look at sorghum as a kind of a different food crop, and it was a real struggle. It's gluten free, and
Right.
gluten free was not a you know, 20 years ago, people really didn't know very much about celiac disease or gluten-free products. And the products that were out there were terrible, and nobody was really thinking about that.
Right.
And, Lloyd was trying to get sorghum into Frito-Lay. I remember actually going to meetings with him at to Frito-Lay to try and incorporate sorghum into some of their tortilla chip production because they were looking for some alternative
Right.
grains to
Bob Brown was a very forward thinking guy.
thinking person. Yeah, for sure. So I didn't really know too much about what you guys were doing. And then I got just pretty excited about it because, we started talking about sorghum as maybe a different kind of food grain that people in this country just didn't have any knowledge of. And I think that's kind of how the whole grains thing really kind of took off from those kind of conversations.
Right.
Um,
And we had the conference at the Dell and then
mm,
the anniversary conference of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid, and you
yeah.
and Mike Orlando were there.
Yeah, yeah, Mike and I, and then I remember about seven or eight of us having dinner, talking about our frustrations with why Americans don't eat more whole grains, right? I think we were all a little shocked about the fact that people thought they were eating whole wheat if they were eating brown bread, you know, which was really a little bit of molasses that was thrown into white bread,
Right.
to call it healthier. And so we had a really good dinner, a really good discussion around the dinner about is there something we could do, to get whole grains to be a little bit more, out there. And there was a woman, the nutritionist from General Mills, I think was in that maybe, and Bob from Frito-Lay, I think was at the
Right.
dinner. So there was about seven or eight of us that really just kind of sat around and brainstormed something. And I think
Then
that
we
was kind of
went
the
to
genesis.
IFT, and
Yeah,
there were seven companies there.
yeah, that's right.
I remember you drove me back to the airport after the meeting in a truck.
Yep, yeah, probably in my truck. Yeah, so to me, that's kind of how the whole genesis of the Whole Grains Council started. It was just a group of us that were just trying to figure out, can we even make a difference in getting people to eat more whole grains? And obviously, I had an interest in it because of sorghum, and everybody else, was more of a nutritional aspect of trying to get people to eat more whole grains. And so I think that was a really important dinner, you
And
know.
that was the one in Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But a lot of the whole grains kind of came out of stuff like that. I mean,
Right.
I remember Cindy, Dunn, I think you and myself sitting around a table trying to figure out how we might develop a whole grain stamp,
Mhm.
and then using paper napkins to kind of draw. I remember us thinking about, oh, the gas gauge, right? And then oh, well, maybe we should do a pie or, and I think we spent a little bit of time around a dinner again, trying to brainstorm something that might actually resonate with consumers. So we spent a little bit of time thinking about what that stamp would look like. But again, that all stemmed from a dinner, you know.
Things always happen with food.
Yeah, always around a good bottle of wine and a nice meal.
No. And
So
and we did have the Whole Grains Council for a year and a half with, or 2 years without a stamp.
yeah,
We were really
but
trying to educate.
remember, Sarah, the main focus of the Whole Grains Council initially was to get a consumer-friendly definition of whole grains.
Exactly.
That was our big battle because we would talk to several different people and everybody had a different idea of what a consumer-friendly, definition should be, and none of it resonated. And I remember getting on one of the committees at the AACC,
Mhm.
Serial Chemist Group, um, who developed this whole grain working council, basically to kind of help push the idea of getting more user-friendly consumer definition. And that took about 2 years to get through.
It did. It
You
did.
know, that was a struggle, I think, initially for us to get that off the ground because we couldn't. I think the council couldn't see how we were going to get a stamp or any, you know, thing put together if we couldn't define what a whole grain was to a consumer. And nobody knew what a caryopsis was in a grain, and nobody knew what, I mean,
Nor did
people
they
had a
want
hard
to
enough time
know.
with the germ, explaining what that was. And so I think after the AACC basically green lit the definition, I think that's when we got more serious about the stamp, because we really had something to fall back on.
And also using the example of the coloring in bread that
Yeah,
consumers couldn't find whole grains at retail,
right, right. Couldn't find anything. Their idea of whole grains was a brown bread.
or the words stone ground or
Right,
multigrain, those
right, or
things don't
multigrain. Right.
necessarily.
Yeah. And the other challenge was too, I mean, we fought a little bit at AACC about identifying what whole grains were, right? Because I remember the soybean guys wanted to have soybeans as a whole grain. And we fought, to keep that basically relegated to cereals. And so, that really did take a couple of years to kind of straighten that all out. So, that helped us because then on the web page, we had a consumer friendly definition. We also put up the scientific definition for the geeks, right? And then we put a list of what we considered were whole grains. That was really kind of defined by AACC, by a scientific community. So I think that was pretty much one of the keys to the Whole Grains Council was that we were trying to do this based on science, right? With scientific support behind it. And then this stamp kind of organically grew out of that. And again, the stamp was an interesting thing because I remember meeting Dunn and Cindy in DC to go to the
Right.
FDA. And we spent probably 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer with the FDA, trying to figure out what we were going to put on the stamp. Initially the stamp, we were going to try and go for the good and excellent. And we get to the FDA and they're like, what do you mean by good? And we were like, well, yeah, like it had, we think 8 grams of well, really, what does good really mean to you? And how are you going to define excellent? And, and I think the three of us were so frustrated by just kind of having this circular argument with them about words that we just said, okay, what if we just put how many grams are on the stamp? And they were like, oh, okay.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah, it was basically that easy. I mean, I think the three of us walked out of that meeting like, wow, that's a lot easier because we weren't making any claim.
Right.
We weren't saying it was a good source. We weren't saying it was excellent. We weren't saying it's good for you to eat. We weren't really making any claim other than this had 8 grams of, or 15 grams, or 9 zillion grams of whole grains in it.
And the education program that went with that to say why that's important.
Right, right. So we went in not really knowing what the discussion at the FDA was going to be like, coming out like, wow, that was a lot easier than we thought. Because everybody we had talked to said, oh my God, the FDA, it's going to take you years to get them to approve anything or not go after your stamp, or, and I think once we walked out of that meeting, basically with a green light on the stamp just took off. It
Right.
just
And
took off.
we still get companies applying every week to
Yeah,
use
no,
this.
it's great. I mean, I think it's really been a very good success story. It helped that General Mills was right there, right? And
Right.
General Mills and the nutrition group at General Mills was really pushing to move all their products to whole grains. So that was, of all the companies, they were probably the biggest help to the Whole Grains Council
I
because
remember
it's a big
Dunn
company.
and, Dunn and I went to Minneapolis. It was minus 17 degrees in January, and the CEO we had a meeting with the CEO, and he looked at Dunn and said, do you think whole grains are the next big thing? And Dunn said, yes. And,
Mhm.
I think they had already made the move to bring all their products to be whole
Yeah,
grain, but
yeah,
it was pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. And it was funny, kind of the pushback of the whole grains thing, because I remember talking to some nutrition people. It's like, well, big deal, it's whole grains. Why aren't you finding salt? Why aren't you finding cheese? Why aren't you? It was like, our industry does things with baby steps.
Right.
And this was a huge baby step to get a major company to switch all their products to whole grains. I mean, that was a big baby step. And to tell them and then go after them for salt and cheese and all the other crap they put in it, that was going to be a non-starter if
Right.
we tried to do all that at once. So I think it was
And,
just
and
one thing
also
at a time.
we were going for descriptive, not
Yeah,
prescriptive.
right. That's right. I mean, we all know Americans eat unhealthy. We were trying to figure out how to make their diet a little healthier. And
And
so that was a
most
struggle.
people do know that a cookie has sugar in it.
Yeah, right.
If
And
you're
eating a cookie isn't bad as long as you're not eating, 2 dozen at a sitting. If you're eating a cookie or two every once in a while, that's okay. But we don't do that.
except maybe in Christmas season,
Yeah, well, then we eat 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 dozen. Yeah,
a day,
a day. Yeah,
two a day.
yeah, if not more. Yeah.
What are you most proud of personally?
Well, um, I think what I'm most proud of is the fact that we were actually able, as an organization, to reach out and get people interested in whole grains. I mean, I, I remember going to some of the high school lunch programs and talking to some of the chefs that were starting to try to introduce whole grains into our kids. So I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to reach some people to actually get them to start thinking about whole grains, especially at a young age. Because as you know, that's how we get Americans to change how they eat, is when their school kid comes home or girl comes home and says, Mom, Dad, I don't want this anymore. I want, carrots, or I want whole grains, or I want healthier food at home. I mean, that's how we get people to. And I think we were making a bit of an impact on some of these high school kids. Because we did push this as an alternative for people. That and the stamp, of course, I mean, I thought the stamp was a great idea. And again, a lot of good ideas come from just sitting around a table brainstorming stuff. And that was a good idea.
And we were lucky to have people as passionate as you and Mike Orlando.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I keep in touch with Mike.
I'm talking to him later this afternoon.
Oh, say hello to him. Tell him
I-
I sent him a Christmas card and he needs to send me a Christmas card.
All right, I will tell him.
Yeah. No. Yeah, we had really good, passionate people around. I mean, Jesse was really passionate about whole grains.
Remember her Milo salad
Yeah, it was
at the
great.
Dell?
Yeah, yeah. And she introduced the Milo salad at her deli in Stanford.
Right.
And she was really passionate about food and eating healthy, and probably one of the first farm to table people in the country, even though she doesn't get much credit for that.
I know she deserves more.
She does, because she was really pushing that envelope, 25 years ago when other people weren't thinking about that. And so she was a good addition to the group too. Um, and then we had some really, I think, um, really dedicated nutritionists
Mhm.
at some of these big companies.
Right.
And as you know, pushing big companies to do things can be a real challenge. So I think these people had a lot of guts and were putting their reputation on the line, to get these companies to really start thinking about more nutritious foods.
Right.
So
Like
it was,
Bob Brown at Frito-Lay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Bob really pushed that big time. I'm not quite sure how far he got, but
He
he
did get
tried.
trans fats out of,
Right. Which was a big deal.
that was
Yeah.
a big deal too.
Yeah. Yeah. But you think about how much of their reputation they put on the line to do stuff like that,
Mm.
because they would have been blackballed, right? If they got booted out of the companies. They would have had a big check mark against their name. Oh, this person's just wants to change everything, and it's gonna, harass you to eat produce products that are more nutritious. I think they really stuck their necks out for a lot of things.
And also food service companies like Compass that
Yeah,
made a big commitment to whole grains
yeah, yeah,
early on.
yeah. Yeah, I really wish more of those companies would actually get on board with better food. But that's problematic for sure. It's bottom line, right, for companies. And they think whole grains is expensive. They think nutritious food's expensive. But, you know, it's more expensive treating health problems.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. No, I have great memories of the Whole Grains Council for sure, and how it started, how it got off the ground, and really, I think the success of it.
Well, we are very grateful to you for everything you did
Yeah, no, it
way
was fun.
back when and
Yeah, it was fun.
as time went along.
Yeah, yeah.
So
How are you
thank
guys doing? How's? I mean, I keep on following the Whole Grains. I mean, it looks like we just
you.
keep on going.
We are, and I mean, the consumption, there's more whole grains in the food supply. There are more
Right?
products bearing the stamp.
Yeah.
And
The only regret I have is I wish we got a penny stamp, right? We would have been set for life, you know?
but remember, we wanted to say keep it simple.
We
And,
did.
you
Yeah.
know, and, the Oldways board would bring up the idea of, buy the product, and the staff just said, this is just way too complicated and it
Yeah.
wouldn't work. It would
Yeah.
just be really difficult.
I think one of the nice things, well, one of the things, the first things I remember about Lloyd Rooney was the first day I had a class with him. He walked up to the board and he wrote "kiss" on the board, and
Yeah.
we're all looking at him like, "What?" You know, he was, come on, what is this? Keep it stupid simple, and or simple stupid. And it was like, what does that mean? But I think that's the kind of attitude we took of the whole Grains Council. We need to keep it
And,
simple and
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 it would be so, because, companies change their products, um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it would be just a logistical nightmare.
yeah,
One other big thing that happened was getting on Oprah.
yeah, for sure. And getting on Oprah um sometimes had good things, sometimes had bad things, right? I mean, I think we were pretty close to getting on Oprah when the whole big stink about meat was coming out with her, and so the meat producers of the country were really angry at her for bad
Oh.
mouthing meat. And
You lived in Texas, and so you knew that.
oh yeah, I mean that was a big stink, right? And so Oprah had its good things and its bad things for especially for farmers. So, I think it really helped us in a particular demographic, you know,
Right.
and it could have hurt us in others. So it was kind of a mixed blessing with Oprah sometimes.
That's true. That's true.
But I mean, we did reach out to, her gazillion viewers, which was really important.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Continuing to raise awareness. Today, do you get our Fresh Friday emails every other Friday, or
No, you should put me on that list. I don't know.
oh, but today there's a recipe from the United Sorghum Checkoff program.
Yeah. They've actually really done a good job about pushing food products, and trying to introduce people to use sorghum in food. So they've
I'll
really spent some time. Yeah,
forward you today's and then put you on the list.
yeah, yeah. No, I'd like that.
Well, Jeff, it's wonderful to talk to you.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to you and Val, and you will get my card before the end of the year.
Okay. Say hi to Mike for me. Tell him he owes me a Christmas card. So,
I will tell him. I will
okay.
tell him. And thank you so much. This is
Oh,
wonderful.
anytime. Yeah. Thanks.
Be well.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.